Hello, I am Zakiya Jackson, the president of Expectations Project, joined by the illustrious Cami King, the director of Advocacy and Training. And we are here to talk about something near and dear to our hearts, but also we're sure many of you. How to do the work and stay human in the midst of so much going on. Especially in the midst of caring about so many different things. There's so many things we're concerned about, that we care about. You know, it's only March, mid-March of 2022, but already, even in the span of this year, we have seen and experienced so much. And I think for many of us, our hearts are heavy or torn or confused, right? About how to grapple with being people who want to do work, who want to make the world more livable, more manageable, who want to experience more ease, right? We want that for ourselves and for children and for many others. And how do we do that in the midst of so much happening while we are losing our breath, right? And sometimes it may feel like we're losing our humanity. Well, Cami and I want to help with that today, and we want to offer two different sorts of resources or tools to help us while are contending with so much. I was speaking earlier, at Expectations, we focus specifically on education equity, but we aren't people ourselves, nor do we think the people who follow us are only thinking about schools. We understand that we're also thinking about a war going on overseas, that we're also thinking about homelessness. And honestly, that impacts children too, right? We're also thinking about COVID and will there be another surge? We're also thinking about just so many things, and it can feel just so weighty. And so the first thing that we're going to do as a tool, a resource to offer you, is a grounding exercise. Something that I know has meant a lot to me in my life. We're going to take a little bit longer of a grounding exercise. Don't worry. I mean like 2 or 3 minutes. I don't mean longer, like 25 minutes. But we're going to do this grounding exercise. But I want to encourage us and let you know that you can take 30 seconds to ground yourself if that's all you have, right? You can take 1 minute. If you have more time, sometimes I understand that time is a luxury. You can take a lot more time. It just depends on what you have available to you. So take this as you can. You can follow along with us, or you can modify it in any way that you see fit. So if you're able, put your feet flat on the ground. If you're comfortable, put your hands in a position that it has them open. So you could hold them open like this. You could put them on your lap. You could put them in a prayer pose if that's something that is warm or comforting to you, but do what you would like in a way that has your hands open and receptive. I'm going to lead us in some breaths to get started, and then I'm going to lead us through some affirmations that will help us deal with the anxiety or the nervousness that we feel around contending with so much. I'll start with just 5 deep breaths where you're just feeling your body and feeling the space that you're in this moment. I'll count for us. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. I'm going to lead us through 5 more breaths now. And if you will, if you feel any sensation in your body, just put one of your hands. If you feel your heart, if your neck is hurting, if your shoulder feels a little strange, if your knee is odd, put your hand wherever you might feel something. And if you don't feel anything in particular or don't want to, you can leave your hands where they are. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, one more phase of this. As we breathe, I'm going to say a phrase. If you're comfortable, you can repeat it or you can just think it if you don't want to say it out loud. One of the important things about mindfulness and grounding exercises is that you do what is comfortable and what you're capable of doing in the moment. 1, I am human. 2, I am enough. 3, I am part of the solution. 4, I am tired. 5, I can. If your eyes are closed, as mine were for much of the time, you can open them back up. You can lift your hands and stretch them to the sky if you'd like. I like to stretch my neck because my neck gets tight too often and stretch from side to side sometimes. I find that breathing like this just helps me remember I'm human, noticing what my body feels like, reciting some things that are true about me, that I am human, that I am enough. It helps me not get lost in a spiral of anxiety at times. I want to pause for a moment because since Cami participated with us in these exercises, Cami, did any thoughts come to your mind, or did you notice or feel anything interesting while you were taking your deep breaths?
As I was breathing, I realized it was the first time today that I stopped to really give attention to myself and to my body. And so that was my first noticing. I noticed some tension here through the exercise. And in the affirmation portion, I didn't realize how much I needed to be reminded that I can, that I'm empowered, that I am able, that I can. And so that affirmation was most helpful for me.
Thanks for sharing that with us, Cami. I'll share too that I noticed, even though I led the exercise, I didn't practice before I did it with everyone today. I noticed that my shoulders were like scrunched up high. That often happens with me. It's probably why my neck gets tight too. And so it felt good with the deep breaths to attempt to just let my shoulders fall and let my shoulders relax. And I think that's symbolic of what we hope we can have as a community of people who care, a space and a place to let our shoulders relax together, to remember that we can, do this hard work together and that we don't need to carry the burden, whew, of all the things all by ourselves. I don't know about you, Cami. I know growing up in a very spiritual, faithful, and religious family, that sometimes things like breathing and mindfulness were seen as new age and maybe a little scary, maybe a little bit extra, right? And so I'm grateful as an adult to have learned and seen more that not only is it not necessarily scary to take deep breaths and to be mindful and to have affirmations. Some people call them mantras, right? It's actually so biologically good for our bodies. Deep breaths help our body and our mind actually physically reset. More breath gets more oxygen to our lungs. It also helps our blood flow more healthfully. It's kind of when we take the time to take deep breaths, it's almost like being a cheerleader for our body. Go, yes, you can heal yourself. You can take care of yourself. You can do it. And it's always fascinates me how simple things like drinking a lot of water, taking really deep breaths and taking time for that, getting good amounts of sleep really helps our body and our mind renew and regenerate. And so we just wanted to offer this as one tool for us as we are overstimulated by the news. We can't keep up with our Twitter accounts. We can't keep up with the gram and the news and don't know what to watch and what not to bring in. That we can and are allowed to stop and take a moment together, as Cami and I just did here now. I want to let Cami introduce and talk to us some about the next tool and resource that we're going to share with you all.
Thank you, Zakiya. So in addition to grounding and breathing, another important resource we want to offer and share as we continue to do this work, hopefully with our humanity and sanity intact, is a dreaming exercise. Dreaming is an important word at TEP because we believe the work of dreaming, which is facilitated by our God-given gifts of imagination and hope, is one of the key activities that we can do to move us from where we are to where we want to be. While much of our activity and movement work keeps us pushing ahead in various ways, dreaming is the compass that helps us know where we're headed and the guide that helps us discern creative ways we might get there. Movement work, more than anything, is demanding, insisting upon, and fighting for better for and with our loved ones, our communities, and the world. And in the context of what we do here at TEP around education, equity, advocacy, demanding better for and with all God's children. So oftentimes we are trained to name the problem, to name what's wrong and what's missing. And that's an important place to start. But in addition to this, it takes a different kind of work to conceptualize what is needed and an abundance of spaciousness among other resources to envision and move toward whatever better might be, whatever it might look like. So for that, we need two things, imagination and hope. Imagination is our God-given ability to see the unseen. That's how I like to think about it. To begin to create the uncreated and to begin to speak what's not been spoken yet, what's not in existence. Much of my background and training educationally and professionally is in Christian theology and parish ministry. And in Christian terminology, we understand ourselves to be created in the image of God. And like God, we have creative power. Whether we know it or not, we're always creating. And many times we're creating the same old thing over and over as our societies are structured to push us into recreating various versions of the same old oppressive systems. But imagination allows us to intentionally and generatively create something new. And hope, in addition to imagination, is the belief that something better is possible. As we imagine what better might be, our hope enables us to fight for it, to build it, to work for it, and love because of it. The famed civil rights lawyer Brian Stevenson, who I know Zakiya mentions often and has been very impacted positively by his work in life, has often said, yes, often says that hopelessness is the enemy of justice, and that injustice will prevail if hopelessness persists, because if we're not willing to believe things we haven't yet seen, those things will never happen. And in the legacy of many of our ancestors who hoped for freedom and liberation in ways they've never seen, but that we today now enjoy because of them, we too can hope for the world we imagine as we dream together and allow those dreams to guide and ground our work. So that's why this is really important to us at TEP, taking time and space to exercise our imagination, to ground ourselves in hope in intentional activities or exercises around dreaming. In a popular Christian scripture found in the New Testament in the book of Romans, the writer says this: "Dear siblings, I beg you, through the mercy of God, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God. This is your spiritual act of worship. Don't conform yourself to this age, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind so that you can judge what is God's will, what is good, pleasing, and perfect." And whether you consider yourself a Christian or not, I know that the Expectations Project, our advocacy work, is from a place of a faith orientation. But so many of us are already offering our lives. We're putting our bodies on the line in service of justice. You are advocates for a better world. And that's worship to some degree. And as we choose to reject the ills of the world we've inherited and refuse to fit into the dehumanizing molds that are offered to us, we won't allow ourselves to be conformed to it. Our God-given gifts of imagination and hope enable us to dream new realities and new possibilities that, if brought to bear in the world, will test and prove. That just means to be an example of the goodness in humanity, in creation, and in life. And so this is why dreaming for us is so important. As we carry the load of the work that we do, carry so many things regularly, it's important to give ourselves breaks, intervals, and space to dream, to anchor ourselves in the hope and orient ourselves toward new possibilities. So every now and again, we want to give you permission, encourage you to stop and ask yourself, what kind of reality, what kind of community, what kind of life am I dreaming together with my community, or if you're a person of faith, together with community and with the divine, that if brought to bear in this world would be an example, a beacon of goodness, love, and life, what philosophers often call the true, the good, and the beautiful. And so that's what we're after. And we want to give ourselves time and spaciousness to actually dream something new so that our creative energy is being intentionally funneled into that direction to bring to bear new possibilities in the world. So there's many ways to do this, but I want to invite us to just take a few minutes and I'll guide us through an exercise where we can dream. So you may want to get a notebook or something to write on. You can put it in the notes of your phone to remember what comes to mind. I love journaling and writing on a sticky note or something, what comes to me in these moments, because sometimes I'll look back at them and I can see traces of things, and it can be a guide for me as I continue to do work through the years. And so if you want to take a moment to do that, I'll give you a moment to do it, or pause this video and grab a piece of paper or something to write it down. And this is an exercise that you can, do on your own time, at any time. You can stop and take 5 minutes, or I would actually encourage you to do it in community. I have Zakiya here with me. It's always best to dream in community as opposed to just by ourselves. There's hope is strengthened in numbers. So, Zakiya, let's take another deep breath. We're already very well grounded, so we don't have to do too much of that. But let's take a few deep breaths just to take ourselves back to that place of being centered, being aligned with our bodies. And on your next breath, as you exhale, you can say it out loud or just say it to yourself. Let's affirm, say the affirmation, better is possible.
Better is possible.
And a few more breaths. And on this next breath, I want you to say to yourself or out loud, I have the power to imagine something better.
I have the power to imagine something better.
Now, I want us to just take a few minutes. I'll give us maybe 3 minutes. I'll see, you can nudge me when you feel like you've had enough time. But if you're listening to this recording, you can always pause this and take as long as you want. And I want us to answer the following question. What are your dreams for public education? What are you dreaming for children? And a way to think about that, or another way to conceptualize that is, what would a place, a school, an education environment where all God's children can thrive look like? What would it feel like? What would it sound like? What would it smell like? So let your imagination take you to the place of dreaming, of a place where all God's children can thrive. Okay, Zakiya, do you want some more time? I know you could dream all day. This is your
I could dream all day, Cami.
Here with you. If you're in a group with other people, as I get the privilege of being with Zakiya, we encourage you to take a moment, a moment to really think and allow yourself within yourself to think, but then share and engage one another in dreams together. So let's do that for a minute. What are you dreaming for children?
One of the things that when I dream about what public education could be is how schools would look. They would be so bright, Cami. So many colors, so much expression, like murals everywhere, celebration. Like it would look like a celebration because we would always be celebrating children and teachers and families, right? And pictures of students who go to the school, all over the school, not just yearbook photo type pictures. Those can be included, but like pictures of us. I'm saying as though I'm a kid. I really got deep into this dream, Cami. But pictures of us playing sports and of being in clubs and of learning stuff from our favorite math teacher and from being a community.
Mhm.
When I dream of what schools can be, I dream of them being warm, inviting communities where we work hard and we play hard, and we're really invested in each other's success. So that's what I was busy writing about.
Love that.
Yeah.
I think for me, as I was dreaming, what I was drawn most to is how it would feel if I were, you know, in my best world of public education for children. School would feel like home, like where every student
Mm,
feels like they belong there, and where they are centered and cared for,
mm,
and not feel like drudgery and obligation, a place
mm,
where, you know, they have to conform in some kind of way,
mm,
but where there's a belonging and a freedom to creatively become,
mm,
especially when
mm,
I think about young children, because of the developmental things that happen in that age. There's a sense of freedom and belonging that ideally you have in home, to just become whatever that's going to be, as you learn and grow. And so that's what I was thinking more of that feeling of when you walk into a classroom and you're like,
mm.
this is my
I
class.
belong here.
I
I
belong
belong
here.
here.
This is
Yeah,
my school.
I
Yeah.
love it.
Okay. Yeah. So this is one of the many things we do at TP to stay human while we're doing the work. We know that it's hard to carry so many things, but it is important to center ourselves in dreaming to remind us what we're aiming towards. As we're dismantling the things that are broken, we have to make space to think about, okay, what do we want to build now? And how can we harness our creative power to imagine how we might do that together? So thank you all for your time. I'll turn it back over to you, Zakiya.
Thank you so much, Cami, for leading us in that. I really appreciate it. I frankly think we just can't do enough of that. It's really important to keep that as a part of our practice. So just to recap, the two tools that we're leaving you with are grounding, some sort of exercise to help you feel grounded, catch your breath, remember your breath, and affirm yourself in this work. And then dreaming of what it is we are working so hard towards and building towards. We don't want to only think about what's wrong, because then we can get trapped and not actually come up with solutions and options that are going to be liberative. A part of liberation is this dreaming of what it looks like and what it will be, so that we can build towards it. I want to close us with a prayer from Cole Author Riley, who many of you may have heard of. You might not have, but she's the Black liturgist, and she has a series that she puts out quite frequently. And one of her Instagram posts is called "For Those Whose Anxiety is a Menace." Maybe not all of you are struggling with anxiety in this time, but I do think many of us do. And so I want to read this prayer from her. God of sleepless nights, how do we rest when fear has made a home in us? Our bodies are riddled with anxiety, so we eat and look up at screens and lash out and do 1,000 unhelpful things to placate, if only for a moment, the tension rising in us. We have known an elusive anxiety, a fear that cannot be placed or rationalized. Help it to not alienate us, but drive us into communities of patience and understanding. Steady us in your arms, God, that your presence with us would be a mother's tenderness, that we would be rocked and swayed, but that it would be the kind of rocking that comforts us in the arms of our maker and sustainer. Let us breathe deep, keeping rhythm with the chest of God. Inhale, I will meet this fear with rest. Exhale, God, steady me in your arms. Inhale, I cannot place this fear. Exhale, let this breath help my soul to rest. We hope that your soul is able to rest and that you were able to be gentle with yourself as we link arms and continue together. Thank you, everyone.